Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to be splitting my time with the member for Yorkton Melville, a member of Parliament who I consider a good friend, a mentor, and who I deeply respect for his work in preserving and retaining our hunting and angling and firearms traditions. And I'm proud to stand today in the House speaking in support of Bill C-42, the Common Sense Firearms Licensing Act. I first want to comment on the comments by the member for Malpeque when he sneered at people who own firearms. I am chair of the Conservative Hunting and Angling Caucus. Our caucus's mandate is to preserve and protect a way of life. That includes hunting, it includes angling, and is a strong measure of conservation. Hunting and angling groups are Canada's first and most effective conservation groups in the world. And I can see the members across laughing, but the waterfowl hunting community in North America created the North...
The honourable member for Malpeque.
Mr. Speaker, the member may want to misrepresent the House. We're not laughing over here, and no one smeared anglers and hunters. I'll not take that from that member opposite. If he wants to exaggerate, he can do it, but tell him to stick to the facts if you would, Mr. Speaker.
Well, the member for Malpeque will know that, of course, the members, when they have their time, are free to make comments as long as they don't cross lines into unparliamentary language. There's a great degree of liberty that members can take. It's true that there is a standing order that asks members to avoid references to the absence or presence of members in the House. I don't know that that was necessarily what the member for Dauphin-Swan River, Swan River Marquette was really getting at, but we'll let him continue. The honourable member, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. He was sneering at the people who hunt and fish in this country, and the members across and the NDP were laughing as well. I was making the point that the waterfowl hunting community.
The honourable member for Esquimalt-Juan-de-Fuca on the same point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Certainly, while a member may not breach a specific rule here, he's breaching the spirit of debate in the House and taking complete departure from reality of what's going on inside the House. I heard no one smear at hunters and fishers and no one laughing at him, but if he continues in this kind of way, it's going to undermine his credibility as a speaker completely, and it shows an immense disrespect for the House.
Well, again, we're back to a situation, I think, which actually underlines why the standing orders, in fact, ask members to avoid references to other members in the House, either their absence or presence. It really comes from the fact that characterizations of other members usually gets us into a spot in debate that we can quickly get to, for example, contravening the principles of, in particular, Article 18 of the Standing Orders, which really calls on honourable members to refer to other members in a respectful manner. And so these kinds of characterizations are really not very helpful, and I'd ask the honourable member for Dauphin-Swan River to Marquette to be mindful of that in the course of his comments. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the way the member from Malpeque used the word gun lobby, that's obviously intended as an insult to the people who I represent in my constituency. And the gun lobby, so-called, are mothers and daughters and fathers and sons and uncles and aunts who hunt and fish in this country and who dedicate themselves to the conservation of our fish and wildlife resources. They want to narrow the debate, and we are enlarging it. As the chair of the Conservative Hunting and Angling Caucus, I am traveling across the country, meeting with hunting, angling, and conservation groups right across this country. And to a group, Mr. Speaker, they are genuinely supportive of the Common Sense Firearms Licensing Act and even more supportive of the conservation measures this government has brought in, such as the National Conservation Plan. And I'm making the point, Mr. Speaker, that because firearms owners, most of them are hunters, the act of hunting generates a spirit of conservation and a caring for the earth that they are actually attacking. They don't realize it. They think it's all about the guns. It's not. It's about a way of life. And many of us and many of us view the long gun registry and the comments from the members opposite, from the members of Malpeque, those are an attack on a way of life. And I know they don't want to think it that way. They want to narrow it down to an NRA, gun lobby kind of thing. That is so far from the truth. Our message from the Conservative Hunting and Angling Caucus is resonating right across this country when we say, and we point out, and we prove that this party and this government and this Prime Minister and this Minister here are standing up for a way of life that millions of Canadians cherish. And we have the Recreational Fisheries Program, we have the National Conservation Plan, we have our National Areas Conservation Program, the Habitat Stewardship Program, and the most important program of all, the North American Waterfowl Management Plan, a conservation plan, 3 countries in scope, continent-wide, to conserve North America's waterfowl, and guess who supported, created, and funds that? North American hunters. And that's what my community does, and I'm so proud of them for what they do. And they were quite right in the early days of the long gun registry to realize that this was an egregious attack on that way of life. And that's what it really is. And the members opposite can bleat all they want. Well, it's not about the hunting and angling. We really care about public safety. No, they don't. They are attacking a way of life because they don't like the people who participate in this way of life. And in Canada, there's 4 to 5 million people who hunt, fish, and trap. And it is our duty, at least on this side of the House, and again, I'm so proud to be chair of the Conservative Hunting and Angling Caucus, and I'm proud to see the member from Yukon, my co-chair, former conservation officer, wildlife biologist, who deeply understands this way of life in the House today. So again, what the Common Sense Firearms Licensing Act does is help preserve and protect this way of life. We know that criminals are not licensed gun owners and that licensed gun owners are not criminals. But again, the logic of the old C-68 that the Liberal government put forward burdens people who are not criminals while letting criminals getting off. We see it how they vote, Mr. Speaker. Time and time again, they vote against our strong, tough on crime justice bills, looking for root causes. That's what they look for, root causes. You know what a root cause is, Mr. Speaker? Basically, when someone commits a crime, the root cause types look at those of us who are law-abiding citizens and work hard and own property. They basically say, well, it's your fault. You're the person and the group who made this root cause that caused the criminal to commit the crime. Well, on this side of the House, we know that criminals commit crimes because they're not good people. It's as simple as that, Mr. Speaker, and that is common sense. Now again, what was really interesting is that when we eliminated the long gun registry, the crime rate actually fell. And in fact, the year after the registry was abolished, gun crime in Toronto decreased by over 80%. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm not here today to claim that these two things are necessarily linked. In fact, it's precisely the opposite. It proves empirically that measures that make left-wing politicians, like all of them across the way there, feel like they are tackling crime and are generally not worth the paper they are printed on. Now, there's more directly to address the matter that is before us today. As I said, as chair of the Conservative Hunting and Angling Caucus, I travel across the country. I meet with wildlife associations, rod and gun clubs, and everyday ordinary hunters. And without exception, the first problem that I hear when we talk about federal firearms legislation is that there was no common sense. Well, we're bringing common sense in. And it is clear that the early laws drafted by the Liberals were crafted by someone who couldn't tell a rifle from a shotgun. Let me tell you about the Manitoba Wildlife Federation, what they had to say about this bill. They said, we support smart, cost-effective firearms policy that keeps Canadians safe, but treats gun owners fairly. We applaud the Conservative government's ongoing efforts to streamline firearms licensing in Canada to make it more effective and efficient. Now, this one is very interesting. pardon my Manitoba High School French, but the Fédération Québécoise de Chasseurs et Pêcheurs, the Quebec Hunting and Fishing Federation, and this is a quote from them, is thrilled with this initiative. Wow. Quebec hunters are very pleased with this bill, and this is a quote, because it simplifies the license issuing process for law-abiding users while reinforcing the concepts of safety and education. That's a quote. And, Mr. Speaker, there are 575,000 Quebecers who own firearms and enjoy hunting. We are going to make sure that every one of those law-abiding Quebec firearm owners and hunters knows exactly what is in this bill, and we think that they will react accordingly. The Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, 100,000 strong. The changes proposed by this government strike a balance between the need to remove administrative burdens on legal law-abiding firearms owners in Canada and government's intention to protect and enhance public safety. In our opinion, they have succeeded on both counts. So we have quotes from the hunting and angling and conservation groups right across the country. So this notion that the member from Malpac says that there's some kind of narrow base that we're appealing to is utter nonsense. These are regular, common folk who know something bad when they see it and are applauding our government's efforts to protect and preserve the grassroots hunting and, of course, the angling traditions in this country. A quick word on the authorization to transport. That applies only to restricted and prohibited firearms. The member opposite, the member from Malpac, clearly doesn't understand the difference between firearms. When the reclassification happened as well, the Swiss Arms and CZ rifles were reclassified simply because how they looked, not because of what they did. They were semi-automatic firearms, and I own semi-automatic firearms, and other people in this room do as well. So they were reclassified because of how they looked, not what they did. Nobody is proposing that any restricted firearms ever be legalized like fully automatic firearms. I certainly would not support that. In terms of the ATT, every single time that a law-abiding shooter went to the range, they had to get a permit every single day. Now we've made it so once they get there, the first ATT, it's good. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Question et commentaire. En la députée de Gatineau.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Intéressant comme discours, un peu bizarre parfois, mais j'ai surtout retenu, actually, if one thing, Mr. Speaker, from this speech, I tend to want to say to my esteemed colleague in front of me, is that C-42 is anything but a tough-on-crime bill. Anything but. But my question is more about, I kind of sense that even their base is starting to feel a bit used and abused by these attempts to always parade them when they bring anything that is gun-related. And I just want to quote something to him, because somebody was saying, some party stalwarts were saying that they're starting to feel taken for granted. And I'm quoting Dennis Young, who's a former RCMP officer, was the Reform Party's regional coordinator for Manitoba, Saskatchewan in the 90s, and then spent 13 years in Ottawa as an aide to one Conservative MP. Recently, when called by a Conservative fundraiser at his home, Young told him not to bother calling back until the Public Safety Minister responded to his letter about Bill C-42. He said he was miffed that after all his work for the Conservatives, he had received no real answer to his question. It all leaves us feeling a bit like we're just being used for fundraising. If they have that attitude, they're going to be disappointed. So when he talks about tough-on-crime legislation, how does he respond to the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs from Quebec who said ça va à l'encontre du concept de la sécurité du public, de la sécurité des citoyens? How does he answer to that?
Swan River Marquette.
Well, I'm not surprised for a minute that the member opposite would find my speech odd. She has no understanding of what I was talking about. I'm talking about, well, I expect all of them to find my speech odd. The notion of hunters and anglers and families enjoying the outdoor life as a family group with friends and eating wild game and understanding what conservation is all about. Of course that's odd to them. Now, in terms of the public safety aspect of the bill, and of course she referred to Mr. Young. I understand, I know him personally. Nothing is perfect in this world. In fact, the perfect is the enemy of the good. This is a very, very good bill. In terms of public safety, we're strengthening the provisions relating to orders prohibiting the possession of firearms or person that's convicted of an offense involving domestic violence. We are going to import information sharing when restricted or prohibited firearms into Canada. So this bill strikes the right balance between ensuring needless paperwork is eliminated and the rights of law-abiding citizens are protected and the protection of public safety.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Trinity Spadina.
I rise to ask a question about the common sense component of this bill, except that when I started to read it, the only place it's actually mentioned is in the introduction. There's actually no common sense in the bill, which is kind of interesting. But the question I have is this, and it's a very simple one for the minister. I'm trying to figure out, and I guess the House needs to know, how allowing people to drive around cities, where I assume no hunting is being done, we have some big raccoons, but they're really not that dangerous, but how driving around a city with a gun in your trunk is a safe thing to do. Cars are stolen, and we've had reported and repeated incidents of people being followed home from gun ranges and having those people robbed. How is allowing guns, and how does allowing guns driving around a city more easily make cities safer? I'm not speaking for the 4 or 5 legal gun owners who are law-abiding citizens. I'm talking for the 26 million people who don't own guns, many of whom will live in those cities, and many of them are looking to the government to make their cities safe from the illegal use of guns, in particular assault rifles.
The honourable member for Dauphin, Swan River, Marquette.
Well, under our watch in Toronto, gun crime is down 80%. That result speaks for itself. In terms of the authorization to transport, often called an ATT, it applies to prohibited and restricted firearms. Now, a criminal will never register a handgun. A law-abiding citizen will. A criminal will never apply for an ATT. A law-abiding citizen will. By streamlining the process, so once the owner of a restricted firearm who is legally authorized to own it gets an ATT, that person is allowed to use that over the time period that their license goes for. I think that's strictly common sense, and I think we can safely see the gun crime rate in Toronto continue to go down. Now, the knife crime rate in Toronto keeps going up. Now, perhaps we can ask the members opposite to help us with our tough on crime policies, but I doubt it.